What up? What up? It's Ibn Webb, Quran and some here. We doing this official thanks thing here. We have Essex County all day this year here. Actually, got a journalist, Steve Tober, who's done a lot of work as far as high school, just athletics in general, from whether it's reporting, as far as articles, from actually doing some work on television, what have you here. I know it's definitely done a lot as far as in particular, I know during my time here, even with the Montclair Times as well too. So, but I know there's been other publications and other outlets that he's conducted some work for. So I'm looking forward actually to speaking with him and just talking to him about him. He can actually, turn around and I ask the questions. I'll ask the questions here and just have a conversation here. But it's just great that he's still around. He's still putting in the work and just doing something that he enjoys, which a lot of us should be doing. All of us should be doing whenever possible. It don't even become work when you got to love, you got a joy for it. So just hold tight, we're gonna go from there.
Good. Getting through what's been a very strange year with COVID and everything for high school sports. It's been a very odd time, but yeah. I give the NJSAA credit for persevering and putting a wrestling season together, which I thought would never happen. Mm-hmm. And baseball starts this Monday as we're speaking on the Thursday the 15th, which is, of course, the anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color line in baseball. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to forget my good friend Larry Doby, the late Larry Doby, who I used to see regularly at the Yogi Berra Celebrity Golf outing. In fact, I have Larry's book right here, Pride Against Prejudice, which he autographed for me back in the day. Larry, of course, from Patterson East Side and lived in Nishawane Road, as you know, Nishawane Road in Montclair, not far from Nishawane Field. Mm-hmm. Immaculate, of course, played a lot of baseball games through the years. But as far as right now, it's just been an adjustment for everybody. Everybody, me, with our families, with sports. It's been quite a rigmarole, but we're hopefully getting through it.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, just to your point, with this, not only the pandemic, but obviously the celebration of Jackie Robinson, it was interesting, the whole Larry Doby thing and just everything that's going on these days here. I mean, granted, it's been going on forever, but obviously things are more magnified now because we get to see a lot more stuff, a lot more visuals. So, again, I just wanted to say thank you just for, giving me some time. And I know as we talked a couple of times in regards to what Ibn Webb has going on here. What started out was, like I said, and I just been sharing, like, it was something I just, at the top of the year, I was just like, you know what, I just want to try and do something here with my family. It was immediate family first, as far as just talking with them or what have you. Then I realized, just my love for sports, not only sports, but Essex County, New Jersey. New Jersey's near dear to me, will always be, and obviously most of my family is still out there. So I was just trying to just think of those that I knew or knew of and just kind of just roll the dice to reach out to speak to some people, just hear about them. And I know the shoe's on the other foot for you right now here. I'm gonna ask the questions a little bit here, give you a break.
Sure.
I give you a little break. But it's like I said, so that's kind of the gist of it and just kind of how things just came about here. With that even being said, I just wanted to where actually are you? Where are you from?
Well, from North Caldwell, not far from where I live in Caldwell. I went to West Essex High School. Okay. My mother's from Brooklyn, New York. My father's from Jersey City. Their grandparents came over from Europe back in the day. But I went to West Essex Regional High School, which is famous for many people. Scott Bradley, the baseball coach at Princeton. I knew the Bradley family well, because his brother Robbie was the head coach at Princeton for a number of years. Has been in professional soccer for many years because their grandparents lived next door to me in North Caldwell. When you talk about him, you talk about David Chase, the writer, creator of The Sopranos, mm-hmm. The great Joe Piscopo. Wow. Joe Piscopo has his own radio show on AM 97, The Answer. And of course on Saturday Night Live. He's from North Caldwell and West Essex. Mm-hmm. We have the amazing Kreskin lives in North Caldwell. Really? The illusionist, the amazing Kreskin, who's still going strong well into his 80s. Yeah. Now, North Caldwell has had quite a few of interesting folks come through. And they used to film many scenes for The Sopranos, not far from where my parents used to live, off of Mountain Avenue and Aspen Way. back in the day. So North Call has and some great athletes through the years, not only Scott Bradley and Rob Bradley, Bill Wasilius, who played in the NFL for the St. Louis Cardinals out of Syracuse. Gosh, there's so many great soccer players through the years. So they had a great Penn State connection with Coach Walt Barr and many others there. Mike Giampapa was one of the great players for the legendary Ralph Dugan, who just passed away this year, famous soccer coach from Harrison, New Jersey, who coached at West Essex for many years. So West Essex, a regional high school, has a deep history, has the four towns, Roseland, North Caldwell, Fairfield, and Essex Fells that go there. And it's strange because the district is interspersed with Caldwell, West Caldwell, which is a separate school district for James Caldwell High School, which has its own strong tradition. So it's an interesting, the West Essex area. And I played football at Lehigh University for a year, where I graduated from. I also attended the University of Arizona for a year during my time there. I was at U of A when Terry Francona was the right fielder for Arizona, of course, famous manager in baseball, when I was out of U of A for a year. And I came back, graduated from Lehigh, which is known for engineering, but it also has a pretty good journalism department.
Interesting. I'll be back at just a tad bit, so you're not going to let that one slip by me with the football here. So, as far as just your love for sports, football was one of them growing up, or did you?
Oh, sure. I played football, Pop Warner, and then high school. Was fortunate to be selected in Group 3 All-State, second and third team as a junior, senior. I was a center at the time and a linebacker. When they only chose 11 guys, it's not like they do today. They choose like 14 guys on offense, 14 guys on defense, or whatever it is. Back in the day, it was 11 guys, period, on each team. You're a little young to remember that, but people a little bit older than you would remember that. And that was a big deal to make. Second team All Essex one year and third team, but that was a big deal because only 11 guys chosen.
Absolutely, and, best of the best.
Yeah.
Now, so you play center and linebacker. Did you play any other sports, or was football just?
Basketball. I was a player, a varsity basketball player for 3 years under the late Joe Garvey, who was a former Immaculate coach and player. Joe Garvey played at Immaculate, coached at Immaculate, had some of his best teams at Essex Catholic. And then Joe, towards the end of his career, came to West Essex. He coached the great Billy Doran, who was one of the captains at Holy Cross, which was an elite 8 team in the NCAA tournament with Michael Vicens, Ronnie Perry, and Billy Doran for George Blaney back in the day. And he was one of Joe Garvey's best players at West Essex, and did some track and field too, the hurdles, for a couple of years. I always loved baseball, though. I played summer baseball. Didn't play high school baseball because I was out in the track team, but I played summer baseball for many years and enjoy baseball to this day. It's one of my favorite sports. I see you got the Mets hat on today. I'm not going to bust your chops. I'm a Yankee fan, but they're struggling right now. But the Mets are fine. Growing up in this area every year, the Mets and Yankees. I just hope baseball can keep going. It's got its own issues, the game today, with just the timing of it, the way it's played today. But I love baseball and been a big fan of at all levels. I look forward. I'm going to my first baseball game on Monday. Hopefully, if the weather cooperates, Seton Hall Prep in Millburn to get the season started in high school baseball here. After they missed an entire season last year, it'd be great to get back. I mean, it's been. I was talking to Ron Gavazzi, the Montclair coach, the other day, because even though it's been almost 2 years, they're the last team to win the Greater Newark tournament in 2019, defeating Seton Hall Prep. And Ronnie, who's won 2 GNT titles at Montclair, 2012 and then 2019, he's back for his 12th year with the Mounties, and he shares coaching duties with Anthony Genchi. But they have a pretty promising team this year, the Mounties.
No, good stuff. And you said you ran track. What event did you do?
The hurdles, the high hurdles and the intermediate hurdles. Yeah. Yes, it was great, but I competed very well in some of the JV meets and such, but I kept me in shape for football. Football is number one in basketball and in track. But track it's still a big sport at West Essex. It's actually come back very strong in the last 10 years. They've had some really good runners and big numbers. Whenever you get participation in large numbers, you're doing a great job in track, because it's a tough sport to keep people motivated. Because as you know, it's so much of an individual sport. Your alma mater, Immaculate, had some great track people through the years. I mean, just tremendous track people. Richie Kanan, distance, Latish Kinsler, He's a
Right.
great track guy. I mean, there's been so many of them through the years.
Absolutely, and obviously West Essex being a great sports region, school or what have you. Was your family big on sports, or was you just the one that just?
Not really. My
Okay.
father played football 1 year at Caldwell High School,
Okay.
but his mother didn't really want him to play football, but he just talked her into letting him go out his senior year. He was a big football fan, though. He went to a lot of games. He graduated from Southern Methodist University in Dallas. He went to school with Doak Walker, who won the Heisman Trophy way back in the day. And he also knew Don Meredith, of course, was on Monday Night Football, was another SMU graduate. The great Kyle Rote was another player. And but he loved football. But I didn't come from a family of a lot of athletes. I had two older sisters, and one was a cheerleader. And even though they became active in sports after college and high school, but back then for them, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for women in sports, back in the early 70s and whatnot.
No, interesting you say that. And I know you talked about obviously what started your love for writing here? I mean, obviously you had the sports career, but what led you down this road? What got you started?
Things. One was I used to listen to Marv Albert doing the Knicks and Rangers on the radio, and he was my idol. I wanted to be another Marv Albert in terms of the broadcasting. And then I started writing in high school for the Caldwell Progress. Even as a freshman in high school, I was doing baseball articles for the weekly newspaper, The Progress, for a sports editor named Bart Giblin, who was a famous personality over in this neck of the woods back then, and for Al Caro with the Fairfield Chronicle. So I got writing very young age, and I just enjoyed that. I worked for the Wessex Wire newspaper in high school. I worked for the Brown and White at Lehigh University. It was a newspaper there. And I wanted to be a journalist. I love writing. Writing is my number one, but I always enjoyed radio and TV, and I've done some work in both of those areas as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, interesting you say that. Now, you remember your first article you ever wrote?
Yeah, I would say it was with the Progress, right? And covering freshman baseball as a freshman myself for Coach Hugh Albanesius, the late great Hugh Albanesius at West Essex. I'd come over and he'd go over my articles with me and just make sure everything had all the names right and such. And that's the thing with journalism. You got to be precise, accurate, and try to, review your information. We all make mistakes, but you try to do the best you can do. But it's a labor of love, journalism, because it's not an easy profession.
Absolutely. And I know as you get going, as far as in your career, what was, I don't know, in the journalism world, like what was your first, I guess, big break or publication you started, if it's such a thing to say?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it was a big break, but I started as an intern with the Pennsylvania Stoners of the American Soccer League. Pennsylvania is the Keystone State when I was at Lehigh. And I did American soccer, professional soccer. We also did radio spots for WEST in Easton for them, and did public relations for the Stoners. When the ASL soccer was actually kind of big, it was right before the NASL, North American Soccer League, with Pele and Beckenbauer got going. But the ASL really had a lot of good players. And working with them in college, I did a little internship also with the Bethlehem Globe Times, and then got in with weekly papers, the Suburban Publishing and Union, and the Montclair Times after that. At the same time, I was always doing freelance work with Suburban Cablevision, as a freelancer there, and did some work with MSG, Madison Square Garden Network, WNET with Caucus, New Jersey. I did several shows with Steve Adubato on that program, a public affairs program, subjects like recruiting in high schools. We did steroids, Title IX, some questions like that, or topics like that. So, basically meeting people and getting involved with different mediums, radio, TV, newspapers, and I like to bounce around in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it, and it probably keeps you fresh, as far as, mentally, and just kind of just seeing how different publications do different things, I'm sure. And I know you talked about getting to the Montclair Times. When did you arrive there?
I arrived there in September of 1980, coming from the Union Leader. And I was fortunate. My first job out of college was with a Union Leader. And I got my first athletic director I worked with was the late, great Lou Rattino, who was a famous football coach.
I remember.
Also, excellent athletic director, very, very bright man, and very good with the media. And he kind of groomed me as far as just covering all the high school teams in terms of just getting to know the coaches and such. So when we came to Montclair, My first game I covered was Montclair Barringer down at School Stadium.
Okay.
Parked on there, went over the field. I met Butch Fortunato for the first time. Butch wasn't, if you knew Butch, he could be a little cranky at times. Good guy, smart guy, but always wasn't that affable with the media.
Mm-hmm.
But Butch, I met him, and eventually he was fine, but it was the first game I covered there, and gradually just got into the whole Montclair football scene with Butch. And then, of course, Jack Davies after him, and Eddie Labita.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was an interesting run, and I always enjoyed covering the Mountie basketball, especially with the Bob Lester teams in the early 80s.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, so obviously he was in Union, Montclair, so two big sports towns, two big New Jersey towns. So just to kind of, so it was kind of like you just went off and running. I mean, it wasn't no small thing, no small task at all.
No, big. The towns that just are passionate.
Yeah.
I mean, people know how much, from how much passionate Montclair is about their football, but Union is the same way in many ways. And they've had some great history. Tony Stewart, so many great players through the years down there too. And they used to have Montclair's number for a while until Montclair beat them in '83. They had beaten Montclair in '82, and they beat them a couple other times after that. '84, they beat them. Montclair got them back in the '90s, in '96 actually.
Mm-hmm.
It was one Eddie's second championship after he'd beaten Randolph in '94. But Union was always a tough competitor for Montclair, especially when Rattino was there.
Oh no, I remember it. Actually, I remember the one, Tony Stewart, the one game I don't know, grammar school, the mud. It was
at Bloomfield High School.
At Foley Field, Fred Matthews was on Montclair. Fred Matthews was, so I remember
Freddie, one of the few people named the Star Ledger All-State, one of the teams in football and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I think, second team or third team in both. Mm-hmm. Freddie was an amazing athlete. And his son is Willie. Was at Kansas last I knew as a linebacker and trying to make the grade. But Freddie was a special athlete.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember being at that game. I remember being so.
That was a tough
I remember. Yeah.
One of those Mountie fans, no heartbreak. Randolph in '90, but that loss in '85. And Jeff Mills was on that team who made the NFL.
He went to Nebraska, right?
He was on that team in '85. And that was a heartbreaking loss. A lot of people there at Foley Field. Unusual place to play. It was a great game, a classic game. Mm-hmm. But Montclair had nothing to be ashamed about that day. But Jack Davies had a lot of bad luck in big games in Montclair, the late, great Jack Davies.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned, obviously, talking about football, but obviously you was asked to do other sports here. So what was your reaction just having to do other sports as well?
That was fine. I mean, I love high school basketball, and one of my greatest memories is Montclair basketball games, especially in the Essex County tournament in the early '80s. And Bob Lester won 3 out of 4 titles, '82, '83, and '85, and lost to Greg Tynes. I know you've interviewed before, beat Bob in '84 when Clifford Scott.
Yeah.
So that was a great run there for high school basketball. But I enjoyed the girls' sports. I was the editor of Sportsfolio magazine, which is another proud accomplishment of mine, working with the late great Satoru Safora, Japanese-American, who was a publisher. He came from the magazine world, McCall's Magazine. He was a great photographer. I don't know if you remember Sportsfolio. I think you were in. It was a high school sports magazine that came out quarterly and had great color photographs. It started out as a black and white, but I covered a lot of the girls' sports through there too, statewide. Okay. Girls lacrosse and field hockey and so many other things. So I came to appreciate a lot of the sports, editing Sportsfolio. Yeah,
wow. Actually, I didn't know that. And
you don't remember Sportsfolio? What year did you graduate high school again?
I'm 92. So.
Okay, yeah. Sportsfolio was still around then.
Okay.
Had about a good 10, 15-year run.
Okay.
And Sat did a tremendous job. We had a lot of great writers. Mike Kinney wrote with us from the Star Ledger. Bruce Beck from NBC wrote with us.
He's from Livingston, right?
Yeah, I played basketball against him. He's a year older than me, but I played basketball against Bruce in high school because West Essex Livingston were pretty good rivals in basketball and in football.
Okay.
He didn't play football, but he played basketball against them. But we had a lot of great writers. Lowell Snare in wrestling from the Hunterdon Democrat. Marty Berman, who's now the soccer coach, longtime soccer coach at Seton Hall Prep, who was the original soccer writer with the Star Ledger, Marty Berman. And we had some just terrific writers. Bruce Johnson in swimming from Westfield, was the renowned swimming writer in the state from Westfield. So it was quite an experience, Sportsfolio. And I used to did a lot of stories traveling around to major league ballparks, interviewing Jersey-connected people for Sportsfolio. I interviewed Willie Wilson in Kansas City, of course,
from Summit, yeah.
Maybe the greatest athlete to ever come out of New Jersey. Scotty Bradley, I mentioned before, from West Essex, when he was with the Seattle Mariners as a catcher. He caught Randy Johnson's no-hitter. Gene Michael, when he lived in New Jersey, I met him out at Wrigley Field when he was a GM of the Cubs back in the day. Joe Orsulak from Parsippany, when he was with the Orioles, a great athlete from Jersey. I can go on, as many other ones too.
Wow, I mean, just to even hear some of the stuff I didn't even know even about you, and just how rich you are in just history and everything. This is just like great here. And I know, just even mentioning some of the Montclair stuff, well, as far as when you have to go to, let's say, your parochial private schools there, was that kind of like, was that a downer for you, or was it just because you're so used to Montclair High School? And I know sometimes
I always liked, I enjoyed Immaculate, Montclair Kimberly Academy,
MKA,
even the Lackadair girls basketball team.
Remember Lackadair, yeah, wow.
They had some good teams. Sandy Douglas, Patty Sullivan coached them, who's worked at MKA now for years, but she was the girls basketball coach at Lackadair and had some really nice teams in the early 80s. But of course, Immaculate, one of my great memories of Immaculate is going with the late great Paul Cavaney from Cavaney Plumbing. It was a buddy of mine back in the 90s, and sitting with Red Rush, who's a legend at Immaculate, and watching Immaculate against, trying to think who they played, that Our Lady of the Valley, and some of the great teams that back in the day in a packed house. You remember, of course, you know the Immaculate Gym.
Yeah.
And some of my memories, and of course, Ronnie Simpson and some of the teams he played on. Yeah. Ronnie Simpson, I mean, it was just many great players at Immaculate too through the years. A great team with the football players with Gil Ross and Omar Cheeseborough and Troy Austin. Right. That was a great team. Was it 94, I think?
94. Yeah, 94. Yeah, 94. Yes.
And they had a pretty good basketball team too then. So they had a nice run. Reggie Johnson was with that group too.
Yes.
He was a long time assistant football coach at East Orange and many other schools up in North Jersey. And Reggie's a good guy. And so you've had, what I love about Immaculate is the all-around athletes. I mentioned Latish Kinsler before. Guys like that could just multiple sport. The Hackett's, of course. I knew all the Hackett's. I was fortunate to one time have dinner at their house in Orange, right near the Star, around the corner from the Star Tavern there.
Exactly, right on the corner.
Hackett. Right on the corner. Over there with, I have a photo, so if I could find it, with, of course, with Mims Senior and Merlin and Myron and Malika was there, and Mrs. Hackett, and of course Marcus, Michael. I mean, it was a great family. One of Immaculate's greatest families, and those athletes in that family, those guys. I mean, Marcus was maybe the greatest Immaculate athlete ever, if not the greatest, right there in terms of his football, his basketball. He was just tremendous.
Now, it's interesting you say that. I know with a couple of the guys, they've been having conversations. I mean, you know, in sports, just the infamous, the old Mount Rushmore kind of question. And I know it came across me, and I had to think about it. I don't have a fourth person, but I do have three from Immaculate. Actually, it was Lou Raziopi, Marcus Hackett, Rich Kana. The fourth, I don't have a fourth one yet. But those are my three, if I was to say at the moment. And
those are good ones. Those are good ones. Louis Raziopi, just a terrific athlete. I think Nees did him in at Seton Hall University. He played football at Seton Hall University too. Yeah. Great baseball player too, as you know. Louis, who had a tremendous coaching career, I think ended prematurely at Verona. You know, he could still bounce back, but I don't know if he wants to. But Louis is an all-time great. But Marcus is just off the charts how good he was.
Yeah.
And he had just graduated, and he graduated right before I came in at the Times. But I got to know him a little bit just because his brothers were still there. Michael and Mims was one of my favorites too. He had a lot of personality. Mims is a character, and Merlin is great. But that's just a great family. And I try to think. I mean, there were so many. I mean, you think Omar Cheeseborough was quite an athlete. I mean, he might be.
He's one of my favorites. He's
Omar's right up there. He's another guy with a lot of personality. I mean, as a football and basketball player, he was pretty good. Gil Ross was very good.
Yeah, and I just talked to Gil. I just talked to Gil and Troy. Yeah, I just spoke to them. But
one of the great institutions. Thinking of Gil, I used to frequent the Montclair YMCA. I was a longtime member of the Montclair YMCA, and the people you'd see down there, including Gil's father, Gil Ross Sr., who was a great guy who unfortunately passed away.
Yes.
Well, what a wonderful man I used to see down at the Montclair Y. And I think of the people you'd see down at the Montclair Y, just legends. Louis Zorich, the actor from Montclair, who was Olympia of the Caucasus from Moonstruck's husband. He would be at the Montclair Y. Dale Berra, who I still see to this day because Dale is still active in the area. He just came out with a book last year about he and his dad Yogi. Just the people at the Montclair Y, which is another centerpiece of Montclair, as you know, not in a stone's throw from Immaculate.
Yeah. Definitely. And just a little note about me you probably never knew. I grew up playing sports in Montclair, particularly football, as before high school. So I'm obviously Montclair Mountie. That was always like a dream of mine. I always wanted to have that Mounties across my back, but it didn't happen because I grew up in Orange. But I played football in Montclair as far as growing up. But that was
Did you
always.
play with the Cobras? Were you with the Cobras?
I played Mr. Finney. Yeah.
Mr. Finney, Howard Finney.
Yeah.
I hope Howard's doing well. I haven't heard about Howard lately. I know he's retired, but he was unbelievable, the work ethic of that man.
Yeah, he was amazing. Just to put that league together and the sustainability and everything. So, like I said, I was fortunate enough 4th, 5th grade to play straight through 8th grade. And actually, we won here. We actually 8th grade, we went undefeated, and we actually went down and won the national championship in Florida.
I remember that was a big deal. It was a big deal going to Florida back then.
Yeah, so we went down there, and obviously majority of those guys went over to the high school. So it's interesting you mentioned that Randolph game. I felt like I lost because I played with those guys.
All those guys, Lenny Watkins and all those guys.
Right, Lenny was a year ahead of me. But who was with me? It was the Jason Currys. Jason Curry, those guys. I know Pond was a year ahead of me too. Lamont, he was a year ahead.
Lamont Ponton
and all those guys, right? So
yeah, that was a great bunch. A late Darrell Elder.
Yes,
was a linebacker in that team.
Darrell, Corey Higgins, Terrence Garrison,
Corey Higgins,
all those guys. Yeah.
No, that was a great bunch.
How was it covering that game? I'm sure it was a heck of a build.
It was interesting because I was working with Salmon's Cable, the Morris County cable company, because we did a sports show up there. I was on the Randolph side doing the game, writing the article for the Montclair Times, but covering the game from the Randolph TV.
That's not a conflict? County. That wasn't a conflict?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And I was working with Glenn Crooks, who worked at WMTR Radio, where he was a full-timer. I used to string at WMTR, which is 12:50 a.m. It's the oldies now here in North Jersey, still out of Morristown. But we were doing the game, and Paul Spahala and Dick Zimmer were doing the game for Suburban Cable. So we had two cable, which is I don't think it's ever happened before. Two cable stations doing the game, and of course the crowd was unbelievable. Whatever 10,000, whatever it was, and just the build up from the morning because I was there the whole day, and then the post game. We interviewed the Randolph players afterwards, but the heartbreak of the Montclair kids was just incredible. And poor Jack Davies, I don't think he ever recovered from that loss. Because he retired a few months later from coaching. And it was just emotional. Well, what people don't remember about the follow-up to that game is the 94 game, which was really a rematch, a chance of redemption for Montclair, which they got, was a tremendous game with a great crowd at John J. Bauer Memorial Stadium in Randolph. There was a good 7,000 to 8,000 people there that day.
Okay.
I was doing that game for Suburban Cable, actually, with Brian Winter, who was doing the color commentary. Brian used to be the athletic director and football coach at Montclair Kimberly Academy. And we did that game, and Montclair came back and won that game dramatically for Eddie Labita, who, of course, was the offensive coordinator in the 90 team for Jack. Yeah. And that was a great Montclair win to beat Randolph up there that year. So they did get a little redemption, which a lot of people don't look back on. There's so many strange things happened in the first Montclair Randolph game.
Right.
The official putting too much time back on the clock, when they reset the clock, when the fans ran on the field, and just the decision to have Lamont take a knee. I would have ran the football myself. I would have given to Corey Higgins and just try to run the ball. Just the line of scrimmage, like most of the time they do in the NFL, just to use up some more time. But whatever, it is what it is. And unfortunately for Montclair, Billy Williams calls a fair catch, and then of course Mike Groh kicks the field goal. Mike Groh was a really good field goal kicker and is a good player. Had a good career at the University of Virginia.
Right, quarterback.
He had a nice career. And his dad, Al, coached with the 49ers fact, his dad, Al,
He was with the Giants back then, though.
he was at the Giants, but he was flying out. I think the Giants are playing the 49ers that weekend, and he had to fly out after the game.
Okay.
He was after the Montclair Randolph game.
Okay. Now, interesting. You mentioned the '94 team. Some of the ironies in that you had Derek actually winning it kind of for his brother, so to speak. He was playing quarterback.
Right.
Yeah,
Derek,
so
that's right.
Yeah,
Derek Bonton, who was sometimes overshadowed by Lamont, maybe a little bit. Derek was taller than Lamont, and he had a nice career himself.
Yeah,
at Montclair. I think he went down to Alcorn State, I believe, for a while.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he went.
I think he did. I think he went down to Alcorn State for at least a couple of years. And I know that the Star Ledger did a piece about that '90 team and some of the problems a couple of players had, but I think that was a little bit overrated because a lot of those guys were very successful off that team and other avenues of life.
Absolutely. I still periodically keep in touch with Jason. Jason's an attorney. Yes, obviously he went to Rutgers, played at Rutgers, but all those guys, a lot of those guys are doing fairly well for themselves here.
Another great all-around athlete, Jason, who played some baseball at Montclair.
Baseball, that's right. Yeah,
good basketball player when he played.
Yeah. And we graduated the same year. Yeah, we graduated the same year. So we obviously kept tabs on one another and been able to still stay in touch here. So it's just interesting. And just one more thing, with that '94, it was the nice even comparison. I mean, obviously we had Immaculate and you had Montclair. They both won state championships that year. You had Gil, you had Derek, you had Omar Liggins, you had Reggie Johnson. It's just interesting, like the parallels, like just kind of with that.
Athletes, Omar Liggins is a nice player.
Yeah.
And Immaculate had some great kids. Omar Cheeseborough was also a very good kick returner too.
Yeah.
Very good kick returner. One of the great games their year was they played Mountain Lakes at Cody Field. And that was a very, we did that game on TV, in fact, in the Morris County station.
Okay.
That little crickety press box at Cody Field.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of pit bulls barking down. Of course, that field Cody Field is quite a classic.
Sounds about right.
Imagine what a dream it would be for the Immaculate alumni to ever get a field turf in there.
I know. But it's still the aura of it, the field house. You mentioned the booth and everything. It's the mystique. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and they fixed up the field house nicely. Did a nice job in the field house.
Absolutely. Now, interesting. It's kind of like you have the public school, you have the parochial school. Now you also do MKA. I'm sure it's just like an interesting dynamic as far as student athletes you had to cover here. So how was it even at MKA?
MKA is a smaller, of course, private. They don't recruit. Some of the elite Catholic schools are accused of recruiting, at least, so they get a lot of high academic kids, obviously. And so it's a different kind of a level, but some great teams and great athletes, great coaches through the years there too. So in good competition. I've seen some great prep tournament basketball games. Tony Jones is a good friend who's been the basketball coach at MKA for 20 years. He coached Kyrie Irving for 2 years at MKA. And they won a prep championship Kyrie's sophomore year before he transferred to St. Patrick's and Elizabeth for his final 2 years. And it was a great semifinal against what was known then as Solomon Schechter, now called Golda Ak, coached by the great Sandy Payonin, who's a famous AAU coach with the Roadrunners.
Sandy,
maybe the most famous AAU coach in New Jersey. But he also, his high school job has always been either Solomon Schechter, now Golda Ak. And Sandy coached Kyrie, but Kyrie got in foul trouble in the first half. MKA, this is a semifinal of the Prep Base back in Kyrie's sophomore year at Schechter at the time in West Orange. And they're down 17 points, MKA. Kyrie's in foul trouble. And they come back in the second half. Kyrie shoots the lights out, makes drives at a basket like he does now with the Nets. And they came back and won the game. And it drove Sandy Payonin nuts to have his own AAU player beat him in a prep semi. Probably the one time when Solomon Schechter might have gotten to the final. And then Kyrie led MKA against Passaic Charter at, was played in Clifton there, or Passaic, wherever the old Passaic Charter was. And they won the Prep B title, MKA did, with Kyrie leading the way. And then they, of course, transferred to Patrick School and then on to Duke for 1 year when he was an injury-riddled 1 year before he went to the NBA. But that's, you can't get much better athletes. MKA, talking about athletes, Sean Jones, NFL player for
Raiders
13 years in the NFL, Green Bay Packers. He was a great guy, great player. His brother Max was a great athlete, went to UMass. Good player, I believe Max played in the USFL, as Marcus did. Hackett, we talked about. And Frank Herman, the great baseball pitcher, football quarterback, basketball player who pitched for the Cleveland Indians as a relief pitcher, Frank Herman. So MKA, and Timmy Howard, talk about soccer, the great goalie for the U.S. Olympic team, the national team. Tim Howard played at MKA as a freshman. So you're talking pros in football, Sean Jones, baseball, Frank Herman, basketball, Kyrie Irving, soccer, Tim Howard. So they've had their great athletes too.
No, absolutely. Then as time kind of just goes on, how do you make the shift? I mean, again, you just with the times, but not only with the athletes going to, you have athletes now going to 3, sometimes even 4 high schools in their career, which is just totally different from, obviously back then, but also even your job in itself has this whole digital world takes off here. Like, do you just, I mean, like, are you thinking ahead or are you just kind of going with the flow just with everything?
Well, yeah, I've been doing the Sideline Chatter website since 2004, and I had the newspaper column since 1980 for that. So sidelinechatter.com, do a lot of things online. We have a great audience. We have had, and we cover mostly Essex. We do some Passaic, Morris, a lot of in Union County too. And a great following there. And so we try to do some different projects through the web with that. And Sideline Chatter is a very popular site for features and whatnot in North Jersey. So that keeps me very active. Sideline, I urge everyone to log on to www.sidelinechatter.com. You can Google me, it will come up first because we own the trademark. And check out, we have a great trivia quiz on there you might enjoy going to. Former Sideline Chatter writer and also with the Star Ledger, Sean Riley and his brother Mike Riley, a former coach at McNair Academic in Jersey City, came up with a great quiz, some great Essex County and North Jersey questions. Currently, right now, as we're speaking on the 15th of April, it'll be up for a couple of weeks and at sidelinechatter.com, and go to our feature articles page and try your sports knowledge, especially if you're a Essex County guy or a Jersey guy. We have some great questions there. And that's what's unique about Sideline Chatter. We have a lot of unusual items that some other either websites or news outlets will not have, like a great sports trivia quiz.
Oh no, I'm on it. I'm on it. Now, even with that, you mentioned 2004, where you sound like you were thinking ahead. You knew obviously with some of the print was pretty much going by the wayside here. So you had to, one, keep some income coming. This is your livelihood, just trying to just figure out. So interesting. I mean, was it just one of those things here? Somebody was just like, hey, Steve, we need to just start doing this, being more electronic and internet and getting to that to those.
I could feel it coming. I had a couple friends that are technical or in the web periphery business. One fellow, a friend of mine, does web hosting. Another one builds ads and does some work in advertising on the web. And they both encouraged me at the time and started Sideline Chatter. And it's had a nice, strong following. A lot of people of all ages, male and female athletes and their families. And a lot of old timers come on too to check out the history. So it's been, we got a little bit ahead of the curve, and people enjoy it because it's free content,
right?
And which is hard to find nowadays. And a lot of certainly the high school news, all its papers charge now for content, for some content anyway, just about. So that's nice. And we have some good writers that come on seasonally. J.R. Paracchini, who's been a writer in New Jersey for over 30 years in Union County, does a lot for me in Union County. In fact, he's working on a Union High School baseball preview now.
Okay.
We've had other guys I mentioned, Sean Riley, who's written for us. Jason Bernstein from NJ.com, who's a great young writer. He does some basketball work with us during the winter. So we've had some interesting folks. There's great photographers too coming through. So it's a very popular site, Sideline Chatter. I enjoy your viewers to come on and check us out.
Absolutely. And I think it's just great. I mean, if they're able to make the switch, because again, you would have got left in the dust, for the most part here in regards to if you didn't make that switch. Now, what is when you're thinking about high school sports, I mean, particularly New Jersey here, like what's some of the biggest changes that you see that you do like, and what are some things that you don't like? I mean, this is pre-pandemic. I mean, I know things are different, just everybody's adjusting now, but what have been some transitions or some things like, I don't like the direction this is going, this sport or this individual or this school?
I'm trying to think what I do like. I'm okay with the football expanded playoffs to a certain extent. Playing down the group championship, which is probably going to happen in 2022, it looks like. I think it's probably time for that.
Okay.
And I'm a strong proponent of it. I wasn't maybe 10, 15 years ago, but now I understand why it is. I mean, I am one of the few dinosaurs that still likes Thanksgiving football, which has kind of died out for the most part, except for a couple of corners of the state. But so I think that's a good movement there to give people an opportunity to catch up with the rest of the country and try to play down group champions, which they're going to do in a couple of years if they can vote. I think the final vote is going to go through pretty soon. And basketball-wise, they're talking about cutting back the season, which I'm not too keen on. That's now being discussed in New Jersey. They're going to have another vote in May of shortening the season. I'd almost like to see them take the Tournament of Champions out. The only reason I say that, I think the same cup 2 or 3 elite Catholic schools win every year, just about. There's just been, you've had like 3, you've had Elizabeth one year with Luther Wright,
Orange
Camden with Dewan Wagner,
and
Orange with Deval Simmons, and that was Al Thompson's team, I think.
Yes.
Back in, was Michael Boyd in that team?
No.
He was later.
Years gone. Yeah, a few years gone.
But anyway, you can name the 3 or 4. I think Shawnee won it too. Joe Kessler's Shawnee team with Danny Earl won it one year, and Maurice Allen went to Villanova. But outside of those 4, the publics just don't win it, and it's the same. It's always the same 3 or 4 teams. Yeah, they're great teams, but I think the tournament. So if you're going to shorten the season, I would maybe take that away. The sports where I think Tournament of Champions would work, and they don't do it. It's like baseball, which they do it in softball now, TFC, which for those sports is perfect because it doesn't matter what the size of your school is for baseball and softball. And then in soccer too, they could do it. They don't do it. I think it's because of the timing element. So as far as sports changing, it's hard to say in terms of the actual conducting of the sport. I like to see some rule changes. I think there's too many whistles in sports like girls lacrosse, which I followed for years. They call the whistle too much. It takes away from the flow of the game. I wish they could open it up a little bit and allow that to be a more free-flowing game. As far as the other sports, I think they're doing a pretty good job. And again, hopefully everything is going to get back to semi-normal. Or I think the spring season they're hoping is going to be fairly normal in the spring of 21, starting next week actually, where they're going to have almost a full season. It's going to be maybe a week or 2 short of a normal run, but they're going to almost have as many games, and they're going to have a county and state tournaments.
Good. Real quick with the basketball, what's the rationale for shortening the season?
I think they think there's an overlap for the multi-sport athletes of not having time to prepare for the next sport. And when you get to the smaller schools, you still have a lot of multi-sport athletes out there, male and female.
Okay.
Not so much at the Catholic schools because they're pretty specialized. But I think that's a part of it. And they came to light in this COVID year where some athletes actually I know a female athlete at an Essex County school went from volleyball to girls lacrosse. She left the volleyball team with about 3 weeks left in the season for a couple of factors, including the fear of getting COVID and having to quarantine at her new sport. And so I think the overlaps, because basketball starts and football is sometimes still on, they're still going to the last weekend, not for a lot of teams, but for a few. And that was part of the reason. The length of the season, the winter season is just incredibly long as it is now. And I think they just felt they wanted to just give kids more of an opportunity, maybe for a brief respite, maybe between seasons, and not so much an overlap. So we'll see how it goes. It hasn't been totally approved yet, but they're having another meeting in May. There was just an article on NJ.com yesterday about it, and it's heading in that direction.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I mean, I can see some of that, and I can not see some of it, but I get it. Especially the times that we're in, people are hypersensitive to a lot of things, injuries, over something. You can fill in, put the next word after over, but I get it. I mean, it's a sign of the times, and things are a little different these days. Obviously from playing sports to obviously you spending your whole career in sports here, like what has sports given you that stuck with you to this day?
It's just the human stories of all types of people that I've come in contact with of all ages, the emotions that go into sport, the family ties, and especially in New Jersey, all the connections among different generations of people. They call it, as John Guare's novel in the play, The 6 Degrees of Separation. There's so many connections with relatives, with cousins and brothers and friends, and they come to light, and you get to meet these people, and you learn, oh, he knew him, or he was related to this, and you hear all these family stories that are just part of the core of Americana, and Jersey has a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely not. It's a lot of, they say the whole 6 degrees. It's probably more like 2.
Yeah.
In the sports world in New Jersey, totally. I know. One, I'm appreciative of your time. Before we go, I have a thing. I just call it on the spot, where I just ask some quick fire questions and just put you on the spot a little bit here, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Probably nothing more difficult than when you ask your questions anyway. So this is probably a walk in the park for you. So when driving, do you prefer Parkway or the Turnpike?
I prefer the Turnpike.
How come?
More wide open.
Okay.
You can handle the traffic. It's a little bit easier to handle, especially when you get out in the open.
Okay. Cool. And I know being, West Caldwell kind of guy, and also Montclair, you prefer Bloomfield Avenue and Montclair, or Bloomfield Avenue and Caldwell?
Bloomfield Avenue and Caldwell, definitely.
Okay.
Too much construction going on. Too much going on in Montclair. I used to do actually theater reviews for the whole theater right there in the center of Montclair for many years. I mentioned Olympia Dukakis before, when her and her husband, Louis Zorich, ran the whole theater, which, again, a little bit before your time, maybe. You might remember. It was a big regional playhouse. And I used to spend a lot of time in the Montclair area, and I hosted a film series. There's another thing I didn't tell you. I hosted a film series. I have a very strong interest in film for the Montclair Art Museum for about 12 years. The American Independent Filmmaker Series. We used to screen them at the Claridge Theater. And I used to have great personalities come out for films. Like Joe Morton, who lives in Montclair, a brother from another planet, we showed. He came out. We screened that. Louis Zorich with the film Cheap Shots. Matt Minoy, who was in As Good as It Gets, came out for The Company of Men. And we showed some great films, but I spent a lot of time in Montclair for cultural events, Church Street, Bloomfield Avenue, and to see now just the way it's just been overbuilt. I don't know what exactly they're trying to do. I know they're trying to make it maybe as metropolitan-ish looking as, but I think they've taken a little bit of the character away and the more relaxed feel of downtown Montclair. So I would prefer to drive. I'm getting long-winded. Caldwell's got its own share of traffic, but I think it's a little bit more under control.
Okay. Now, with that being said, film, your favorite movie?
A couple. On the Waterfront.
On the Waterfront. Okay.
With Marlon Brando. That's one of the best. I'm so big fan of a lot of films. Let me think of a couple others. There's one called Auto da Fe, which is an Italian film by Vittorio De Sica, who's known for the film The Bicycle Thief. I'm sorry, that's Umberto D. That's the one by De Sica. Umberto D is about a man and his dog, an old pensioner in Italy in his last couple of years. That's another one. I'm a big, The Deer Hunter, an American film, is one of the strongest American films that ever made. Michael Cimino, which won the Oscar in, I think, 79, with Christopher Walken won an Oscar, and Meryl Streep, one of her great roles.
Okay.
That's another. There's American films. That's one of them. It's kind of an obscure film, but one of my favorites is Local Hero, with Burt Lancaster and Peter Riegert. I've got my favorite sports film is Hoosiers.
Hoosiers, okay.
I love Hoosiers.
Yeah.
I think we talked about redemption before with Montclair and Randolph. It's all about redemption. It's all about, from the coach, the assistant coach, the players, the town. I think it's actually underrated, Hoosiers, how great a film that is.
Definitely
directed by the same director that did Superman, David Anspach. Directed Hoosiers, which was just a classic film. I also like Bang the Drum Slowly, about a baseball player with cancer with Robert De Niro and Michael Moriarty. There's another sports film I'm very fond of. So I have a wide range of films that I've come to love over the years, and being part of the American Filmmaker Series, Independent Series, which Bill Farley, the former mayor of Montclair, the late great Bill Farley, brought me into to host back in the 80s and 90s, which was a great experience. So I have a lot of, and doing whole theater, I got to know a whole different sector of Montclair.
Absolutely.
The theatrical and film world. At one time, even, you could go out on a Saturday or on a weekday, there would be our series at the Montclair Art Museum, which was usually a Thursday night, American Independent Filmmakers, you had the experience, the religious experience through film at the First Baptist Church at Trinity Place, which was a regular film series. You had the Ethical Culture Society in South Orange, was another place to go.
Mm-hmm.
You had a film series up at Montclair State with Emma Fonton, an independent film. You had the Essex Film Club, which is the oldest film club in America, in Nutley, with the great Bob Lee, which was a famous film place, the Essex Film Club on Harrison Street in Nutley. Revival film, this was before Netflix and Amazon and all.
Yeah.
It was a big deal to go out to revival film in Montclair and the surrounding areas on all different days of the week. And there was a certain group of people that enjoyed that. And that's a big part of the cultural experience, which is now gone. Because you got the chance to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me about my films, and we'd talk in detail about why we like certain films and certain people, and we'd get together and talk afterwards. And it was amazing experience and the interplay among people, which we're missing today. Obviously with COVID, it's changed the interactions between human beings, other than now in Zoom, which is fine, but person to person in the room and hanging out together and having coffee or whatever, and just and maybe going to 28 Church, which is an old place. Raymond used to have, he has Raymond's on Church Street, but he used to have a restaurant we used to go to after the Art Museum film series and have cappuccino with people, with actors and such, and just chat about the films. So, some great experiences and culturally and from sports.
No, absolutely. You might have answered my next question here. After, a game or event or what have you, what's your favorite place to eat?
Oh, wow. Well, it depends on what I want to have. If I want pizza, it's a Star Tavern in Orange.
That's
in Crest Pie.
Mm-hmm.
And they've also been a longtime advertiser on Sideline Chatter, but that's not the reason. I used to love it's no longer there, the Park and Orchard in East Rutherford.
Okay.
A lot of vegetarian, which was a great restaurant. Unfortunately, no longer there. I like Tony Decaneca's in Newark in the Portuguese section, mm-hmm. For Portuguese, which is still there. I like the food. I like the Fortes in Caldwell for Italian, right up here on Bloomfield Avenue.
Okay.
They really feed you there.
I figure it was food. Why another reason you prefer Bloomfield Avenue and Caldwell? I figure it was a food reason as well too for that. I figured that.
Close place to get takeout too.
Good stuff. Now, what best article you ever wrote?
What's that now?
Oh, best article you ever wrote. That's like, I nailed it.
One of the best I ever wrote is I just wrote recently.
Okay.
And just one from the heart. You talk about why you do this. Now late great official in football and basketball, and softball, and one-time baseball. And he used to work at the Essex County softball tournament. An icon in Nutley. He's a former athletic director at Weequahic, mm-hmm. and in Nutley also. Angelo Francola, who just passed away tragically from COVID. Great personality, great person. He's one of those people we talk about the 6 degrees of separation in restaurants. He knew everybody in Essex County. Everybody mm-hmm. knew him that was involved with high school sports.
Yeah.
Because he was involved with so many different sports. And he passed away. I wrote a story about him recently, and it just came from the heart, and it seemed to touch a lot of people. It might have been one of the best things I've ever written. And it just wasn't planned, or it just came out. I spoke to a few people I interviewed, and it just came out. And just what we've all gone through in the last 13 months, just emotionally was coming out in that story. And then losing just a real live, vibrant person, 78 years old he might have been, but he was just full of life. And to lose him to this hideous, hideous virus, it just hit home for me and hit home for a lot of people. And to mm-hmm. write about that and create feelings in other people was quite moving for me.
Nah, it sounded like it. And obviously, from this being your career, but just someone on the other side, such as myself, you could just tell with different articles, like you could tell it was heartfelt, and you could just kind of just feel the emotions when you're reading it. Nah, that sounds like that's definitely one of those there.
Yeah, Angelo Francola was quite a personality, and that's too bad you didn't get a chance to meet him. But he officiated all the different sports.
Okay.
And one of the great things of doing this, I would sit with him sometimes on the cold days at Woodman Field in the press box, because he would be the clock operator, because he was getting up in years, and he would tell me stories and just share anecdotes. And once in a while, another official would come through, like Ed Camp He worked in the NFL, but he's a Bergen County official. Montrose Ben Ridgewood, so he'd come by, and just the conversations you get in are just priceless.
Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. And I think about it, I know sometimes when I am around certain people, I just block time out because you just want to soak up everything they got to say, So I totally get it. I totally get it. Now, has there ever been an article you said to yourself that should have never been released?
Oh yeah, there is one. It is a man I have a lot of respect for, but I wrote an article kind of overcritical of Ed Labita when he was his last year at Montclair High football.
Okay.
I just thought the program was getting away from him. It wasn't all his fault. The man was basically running the building at Montclair High because he's the vice principal, head football coach. He was running their computer system. And I just thought the team was just not where it should have been at that point. And we're talking right before John Fiore came in, so like the '98 season. And it was just a tough time. And I guess I think I was a little overcritical of Eddie because I got some feedback on that because I like Eddie very much as a human being. Okay. But I just thought he probably, and it's tough to decide how to do this. Actually, I'm thinking '98. It would have been the late 2000, would have been 2008. I said '98. 2008 was kind of falling apart for Mountie football for a couple of years there. It was just things weren't quite where they should have been on and off the field. And John Fiore came in and actually cleaned up the culture and got that all back. But Eddie did a tremendous job when he came in to replace Len Rivers, who had 2 tough years.
Yeah.
And Eddie came in '93, and he did a great job bringing the program back up because a year later he beat Randolph, and he beat Union 2 years later, and he went to a bunch of finals after that. And he lost to East Orange one year with Quadir Pendleton at Giant Stadium. But so that article I regret a little bit just because I liked Eddie so much as a person. I was a little overly critical. So that might be one that comes to mind.
Okay. Yeah, there's always something like we wish we could just redo, but again,
always. As a writer, you're always going to have that. As a human being, you're going to have something like that. Just dealing with your family, with your wife, with your kids.
Tell me about it.
Things. I mean, come on. We know how tough it is. It's tough to be a human being. You always try to learn from your mistakes as much as possible.
That's right.
But you're going to make them as a writer. And remember, back in the day, now on web, we can change things like within minutes if you make a mistake. But back in the day, when the Montclair Times came out in print, that was it. There was nothing else. So once it was published on Thursday, you make a mistake, it was there forever. You can't change online. You can change things and take them off the archive and maybe readjust them or whatever. But you can't do that when it was just print.
Speaking of print, have you ever missed a deadline?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think I've ever missed a deadline.
Good stuff.
And all different kind of deadlines, but I don't think I've ever. That's always a fun thing too, because I have friends who either would miss deadline or in the business or just be right on the verge. It drives editors crazy, editors screaming at them. But I never really had, I was always pretty prepared on that end.
Okay. Now, best sports town in Essex County?
Best sports town? In Essex County. I tell you, it's a great sports town is Bloomfield. That is a great sports town because they're so interested in so many different sports. And I'm not saying their success is great in every single one of them, but the interest is so strong in boys and girls. That's one. Caldwell is a great sports town. Right where I am here, Caldwell, for a Group 2 school, they got a great athletic director for one thing, and Dan Romano, and great facilities. They turfed their football field a couple of years ago, and they compete well on boys and girls and so many different things. And the fans, I'll tell you what's an example of Caldwell right here. We lost, talking to guys, we lost another guy. He didn't pass away from COVID, but from other issues. A softball coach, Mark Testroyan, who's beloved in this town. He and his brother have combined them and went over 1,000 games in girls soccer and softball at Caldwell over 35 years. He passed away a few months back, and he was on hospice at his home in Caldwell. And a bunch of kids who were alumni got in their cars on a Sunday afternoon, like a day before he passed, and drove by his house just to pay homage to the guy. I mean, it's just one of those things like, wow. And it shows you the kind of town. And they were like this long line of cars that went for blocks and blocks and blocks of people coming to pay homage to him. And I think they just tapped the horn or whatever going by, and a long line of people just because they knew he was fighting for his last few days there. That kind of is amazing. And that shows you a little bit about the town.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, your favorite decade you've covered? Was it a certain decade you?
Yeah. I would say the 80s, 1980s.
Okay.
Yeah. There are just so many. The basketball games I saw in the 80s were just tremendous games.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's centers because I really enjoyed covering Montclair High basketball with Bob Lester as the coach.
Mm-hmm.
He was a good friend too. An interesting man. I mean, he had a reputation of being like kind of crazy on the bench at East Orange because he'd kicking bleachers. He actually got suspended in Montclair for kicking the lockers at Plainfield one time. And there was a major fight with East Orange. Actually, my first year there, when he just come to Montclair in the 80-81 season. But what a great guy, and actually very calm and collected off the court, very introspective. Mm-hmm. And his teams are just fun. One of my favorite players in Montclair ever was his point guard, the last first team All-State Montclair basketball player, Dwayne Jones. I love Dwayne Jones. He's one of my favorite. And it was interesting, he ended up playing at Central Connecticut, but I was at the Madison Square Garden to see an Iona-Louisville game, I think it was. And I met the late Kenny Williamson. Kenny Williamson was an assistant coach at Seton Hall University. At that time, he was at Iona. And Dave Brown, who played at Essex Catholic, who played at Iona, was also there. And I talked those guys into coming out to an Essex County tournament game at Bloomfield High School. It was a quarterfinal game to see Dwayne Jones. And they came out. They actually came out to see him, to scout him for Iona. They ended up giving a scholarship to a guy named Chris Green from New York City. But Dwayne went to Central Connecticut when he had a nice career there. Dwayne was undersized, but he was such a creative playmaker. I've always had a place for point guards. My favorite college player of all time is Phil Ford in North Carolina.
Okay.
I love Phil Ford. I love Ernie DiGregorio from Providence. These guys might be before you. I don't know if you ever saw Ernie D play. He was a classic. It's funny because Ernie D and Phil Ford never had great NBA careers. They were both rookies of the year, but they had long, short careers in the NBA. But what college players, they were unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And I went to Phil Ford's final game when I did a year at the University of Arizona in 1977-78. And I took the bus up to Tempe, Arizona, to see a doubleheader. It was Carolina against San Francisco, which had Bill Cartwright. You remember him play for the Knicks? And a guy named Winford Boynes. And Carolina had Phil Ford and Michael Corrin. And San Francisco won that game. The other game of that doubleheader, New Mexico was #1 in the country at the time, University of New Mexico, with Michael Cooper, of course, played with the Laker teams. And they lost to Cal State Fullerton, which was an upstart team. And I was at that doubleheader, but I saw Phil Ford's final college game. But the interesting part nationally on that day was Cal State Fullerton beating #1 New Mexico, in Tempe, Arizona State. It's a couple-hour bus ride from Tucson when I was at the University of Arizona. But anyway, so some great athletes and times. But the 80s had a lot of the memorable games. And of course, 83 Montclair in football beat Union with Brandy Wells and James. One of my favorite football players in Montclair was James Boo Overby, the running back. And one of the greatest games, maybe my favorite Montclair football game of all time, is the 82 Thanksgiving game with Passaic against Craig Ironhead Hayward. And the great, but because in 83 and Ironhead's senior season, 83, they beat Montclair on Thanksgiving. Montclair won the state title a couple of weeks later against Union. But in 82, Montclair trailed 13-0 at halftime, came back and won 14-13 behind Boo Overby. And one of the assistant coaches of Montclair now is Dr. Ben Brennan, and he was the place kicker. And he kicked the two crucial extra points, including the game winner. And Montclair beat Passaic 14-13 before a good 6,000, 7,000 fans at Whitman Field on a beautiful Thanksgiving day, when Thanksgiving football was still kind of a big deal. Mm-hmm. And even though Passaic was not a big deal opponent in terms of Thanksgiving with Montclair, Bloomfield was known as the opponent. There was a period of time when Bloomfield had gone to the Northern New Jersey and the Scholastic League, and they dropped their Thanksgiving Day game with Montclair from 77 up till 91. They didn't play Montclair on Thanksgiving. Of course, now it's been dropped again from Thanksgiving. They play in the regular season. But anyway, so the 80s have a lot of cachet for me.
Good stuff. Now, who's best high school? This was probably a tough one. Best high school athlete you ever saw or covered?
Willie Wilson from Summit. Who I'm younger than by a year or so, but I saw him as a player at Summit against Verona in a high school game on my team. I was playing at West Essex, was not playing that day. It might have been one of the Jewish holidays weekends. And he was the most amazing running back I've ever seen. And I actually saw him at a basketball camp, a Mid-Atlantic basketball camp when he came, which was by far his third sport, basketball, by far his third sport, but he was still very, very good.
Yeah.
Of course, baseball was the one he chose, which was smart on his part. But what a running back he was in football. I mean, Bo Schembechler wanted him at Michigan, and he was offered in other places, but he was the greatest athlete I ever saw.
Yeah. How about if we kept, obviously, you got love for basketball as well, too. If you were to put together all-time Essex County basketball team, and we could go by positions. Who would
do you
be,
want to go by people I've seen, or just people I just have read about and think it should be part of it?
No, you can mix it up. You can mix it up.
Okay, so it could be both have seen and not seen. I think you got to have Kelly Tripucka on there from Bloomfield.
Okay.
He put up just amazing numbers through the years. I mean, guys like Ron Cornegay, who I didn't see from Central. I didn't see him. Of course, Alani Wright from Southside, I think would probably be considered, who was drafted in a couple of pro sports, basketball and football. There were so many. Let me think of some. Gosh, this is a tough one because it's basketball. You're talking.
I figure I say basketball because only 5. You could just pick versus football or another.
Tell you, was a great player. He started was Clyde Bradshaw. He was a great player. Just as I like the way point guards distribute and everything. I may even consider him in the mix, just from what I saw from performance. Gary Garland was a great player. Okay. Clifford Scott. Gary Garland, who played, I think, at Valley for a year or two before he transferred to Scott. Gary Garland was another guy who was a great player. Gary Garland. Oh wow, I just could go through so many different guys.
Yeah, that was about. That was 5.
About 5. Yeah, Lonnie Wright, Cornegay, Tripucka, Bradshaw. I mean, you could just go on and on with these guys because you could Edgar Jones, Barringer, who was a tremendous high school player, a big man, just off the charts in terms of high school efficiency. Anthony Avent was a great high school player.
Yeah.
So it's an endless number of guys.
Yeah, no, totally. Now, if you was to, I'm not gonna let you off the hook. Your 3 best teams you've ever saw, high school teams, like no matter what sport.
No matter what sport.
No matter what sport.
Wow, 3 best teams in any sport. Probably Don Bosco Prep football when they were considered number 1 in the country. Gosh, I'm thinking about 12 years ago. Maybe. Okay. I'm trying what year that was. They got to be up there, one of the greatest teams, one of Greg Toll's greatest teams that let's see, any sport. Camden with Billy Thompson
and Mill Wagner, those guys.
Actually, it was after Mill Wagner.
Okay.
Kevin Walls was the point guard, but those Camden basketball teams, Mill Wagner, maybe one with Mill Wagner and a young Billy Thompson.
Okay.
Probably that's right up there, one of the best. The Montclair actually played them very tough in a state final in 1982 at the Meadowlands when they stepped into the finals of the Meadowlands. And but the Camden basketball, Don Bosco football, Seton Hall Prep baseball when they had Rick Porcello. I think they lost 1 game that year. Of course, went on for a 12-year major league career. Was drafted by the Detroit Tigers. Pitched a perfect game in the GNT semis against Newark Academy in 2007. Those teams, I guess, Bosco football, Camden basketball, and Seton Hall Prep baseball.
Oh, good stuff. And last question: what's the best part about being Steve Tober?
Best part is best part of it. I like relaxing. Whether it's walking or swimming. I'm a big swimmer. I'm a big active swimmer.
Okay.
I swim outdoors all summer long. My wife Eileen and I enjoy swimming together. I enjoy hiking and swimming with my wife. It's probably I enjoy most.
Nah, good stuff. And what I just want to say, I mean, I want to say thank you, Mr. Tober,
Sure.
and I say that I probably speak for a lot of people here. You're the reason probably some people have gotten scholarships. You're probably the reason some people's scrapbooks is pretty filled to, and you probably the reason a lot of people probably got prom dates they probably didn't deserve.
Maybe you.
No, I was okay. I was with or without the sports. I was okay. But I say thank you just because, again,
Sure.
and particularly, I even take it personally here. Every Thursday, that was obviously Montclair Times when I came out, as far as back when. And I knew, I mean, again, it was always going to be something that you wrote, whether it was about me and or my teammates, or I talked about, my buddies from Montclair High. But me just being just a sports guy, just in general, as far as high school sports, I didn't care if it was MK or whoever it was here. I just think.
And that's great that you carried it over later in life, your interest.
Yeah. No, and I just
tremendous.
totally. And I just wanted to just really just say thank you. Like, you've meant a lot to a lot of us here. And I mean, just your legendary career here, from whether it's print, whether it's television, obviously online now, presence. But I just definitely just wanted to say thanks. Like, you being officially you definitely helped me be officially me. Like I said, it's probably been times where I was sneaking to read the paper in class, or when I shouldn't have been doing it. So like I said, those Thursdays, we live for those Thursdays. The article.
Memorable times.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
And I got to thank my publisher, my late publisher, Don Mulford, who was a legend in Montclair. Talk about another legend, Donald L. Mulford, the publisher of the Montclair Times, who made it such a joy to work there back in the 80s. You talk about the 80s again as a great decade because of people like Don Mulford, and a chance to see athletes through the years in your days, and the great teams of Montclair and Immaculate has made it. It's been a fun career.
Nah, totally. And like I said, and I applaud you. And like I said, just for everything you've done and continue to do here. I do have one question I probably am asking for a lot of people, including myself here. You was at Suburban Cable. Do they have any access to any game tapes or anything? What you think they've done with those? Did they burn them up? Because they could probably make a killing right now.
Yeah, I think you have to go on YouTube or something to find. I think you can find a lot of games. The tapes are hard to come by. Some people have asked me about that. I was just a freelancer there, so I didn't really have access. I had copies of games that I worked on, but a lot of them I don't even have them anymore. But I would say go on YouTube. And obviously, they have the Montclair Randolph game on there, but a lot of those you can find through there. It's just tough because they've had so many changes. Now they're Comcast. And it's just been it's tough to, and the people have all come and gone by now. So I would say go on YouTube probably is your best bet.
Okay, like I said, I know some people asked about that. And I was just like, you know what? Whoever, if they kept an archive or a vault, somebody can make a killing. With that stuff here. But Mr. Tober, thank you so much for your time here. And then again, like I said, I really appreciate it. As far as you just taking time out, because again, I know you're extremely busy, and I can't thank you enough. Obviously, what you meant to me, just in general, just throughout my life, and just whenever I do dust off a scrapbook. I don't even know where they're at right now, but whenever I do, it's just kind of one of those things here. It's just good to just kind of read some of that stuff or what have you. So, but thank you for everything you've done and continue to do.
Thanks, Eben. It's been great. It's been enjoyable, and I hope I gave some people a nice trip down memory lane.
Absolutely. Be well, stay safe. I mean, I know you're going to the game, so hopefully you're social distancing at the game, and like I said, have a great time.
Thanks, Eben, and best to you and your family.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Tober. Be well.
Bye-bye. Take care, Eben.
Thanks. Pretty good stuff here. Like I said, responsible for a lot of articles or what have you here, but I just wanted to say it's cool. Real cool. Like I said, Mr. Tober just taking time out here, man. So we just gonna depart on that note to next go round. That's what it is. Put my hand over my heart. That means I feel you. Yeah.